Being able to see clearly does not mean your eyes are protected. That idea feels reassuring. It feels logical. If you can read, drive, recognize faces, then everything must be working well enough. But in clinical practice, that assumption is one of the most common reasons people miss early changes in their vision. I'm Dr. Warren Hung. On this channel, I focus on helping you understand how your body actually works so you can protect it before small changes become harder to manage. If you find this kind of explanation helpful, consider subscribing. I focus on practical, medically grounded guidance, especially for people over 55, so you can make better decisions before problems build quietly in the background. Now, here's where the misunderstanding begins. Vision is not just about how clearly you see today. It is about how well the structures inside your eyes are being supported every day: your retina, your blood supply, and the surface of the eye itself. You can pass a basic vision test and still have early stress building in those systems. And this becomes more important with age. After about 60, the body's ability to repair and maintain small structures, especially tiny blood vessels, starts to decline. The eyes rely heavily on these microvessels. They deliver oxygen and nutrients to the retina, which is the part of the eye that actually detects light and turns it into signals your brain can understand. If that support becomes less efficient, the retina becomes more vulnerable. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually. And that gradual change is what people often miss. Another common belief is that glasses solve the problem. Glasses improve focus. They adjust how light enters the eye so images look sharper, but they do not change what is happening inside the eye itself. They do not improve blood flow. They do not reduce oxidative stress. They do not support the cells that are responsible for vision. So it is possible to feel like your vision is managed while the underlying system is still under strain. Eye drops are another example. They can be useful for comfort. They can reduce dryness on the surface of the eye. But they do not reach the retina. They do not influence circulation. They do not repair deeper structures. Yet many people rely on them as if they are maintaining eye health. This creates a quiet gap between what feels like care and what is actually happening. And that gap matters more as we get older. Because the eye is not an isolated organ, it reflects what is happening in the rest of the body. Blood pressure, blood sugar, inflammation, and circulation all influence how well your eyes function over time. For example, the retina has one of the highest oxygen demands of any tissue in the body. It is constantly active. It needs a steady, reliable supply of nutrients. If that supply becomes less stable even slightly, the effect may not show up immediately as blurred vision. It may show up later, as slower adaptation to darkness, as increased sensitivity to light, as subtle difficulty focusing after reading. These are often dismissed as normal aging. And to some extent, aging does play a role, but that explanation is incomplete, because the rate at which these changes happen is not the same for everyone. And that difference often comes down to daily patterns that influence the health of the eye's internal systems. This is where the idea of improving eyesight naturally needs to be understood correctly. It does not mean reversing advanced damage or eliminating the need for glasses in every case, but it does mean something very important. It means supporting the systems that allow your eyes to function as well as they can for as long as possible. And in some cases, it means improving how those systems perform, especially if they have been under stress from factors that can still be adjusted. There is another form of false reassurance that I want to address early: feeling no symptoms. Many eye-related changes develop quietly. The brain is very good at compensating. It can fill in gaps. It can adjust to small differences between the two eyes. It can make gradual decline feel almost invisible. So the absence of discomfort or obvious vision loss does not always mean everything is stable. This is especially true for people with conditions like high blood pressure or elevated blood sugar. Both can affect the small vessels in the eye long before a person notices changes in vision. The eye, in many ways, is a window into the vascular system, the network of blood vessels throughout the body. So when we talk about improving eyesight naturally, we are not just talking about the eyes. We are talking about how well blood moves through small vessels, how stable the internal environment of the eye remains, how much stress the retinal cells are under, how well the surface of the eye is maintained, and most importantly, whether these systems are being supported or slowly strained. This is where the shift needs to happen. From thinking, I can see, so I'm fine, to understanding, my vision today does not show me everything that is happening underneath. Once that shift happens, the rest of the conversation becomes much more meaningful. Because the goal is not just to react to vision loss, it is to understand what influences it early enough to do something about it. And to do that, we need to look at how the eye actually works, and what begins to change over time in ways that are easy to overlook. But to understand what truly helps your eyesight, you first need to see how these systems actually function beneath the surface. To understand how eyesight can be supported, you need a clear picture of how the eye actually works. Not in technical terms, but in practical terms you can recognize in daily life. At the center of this is the retina. The retina is a thin layer at the back of the eye. Its job is to detect light and turn it into signals that your brain can interpret as images. You can think of it as the sensor of the eye. But, unlike a camera sensor, the retina is alive. It needs a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients. It needs protection from chemical stress. And it depends on a network of very small blood vessels to keep it functioning properly. Those small vessels are important because they are also fragile. As we get older, these microvessels become less flexible. Blood flow can become less efficient. The delivery of oxygen can become slightly reduced. Not enough to cause immediate vision loss, but enough to place the retinal cells under stress over time. And this is where many people underestimate what is happening. They assume that if they are not seeing a problem, there is no problem. But the retina does not complain early. It adapts, it compensates, it continues to function while under strain, until it cannot compensate as well. That is when changes begin to appear. Now, there is another layer to this. Inside the retina, there are specialized cells that detect light. These cells are constantly active. They process visual information all day long, especially if you spend time reading, using screens, or focusing on detailed tasks. This activity produces what we call oxidative stress. That simply means small amounts of chemical byproducts are generated as the cells work. In a healthy system, the body neutralizes these byproducts using antioxidants. But if the balance shifts, if there is more stress than protection, these byproducts begin to affect the cells themselves. Over time, this can influence how well the retina functions. This is one of the reasons nutrition plays a role in eye health, not as a quick fix, but as ongoing support for this balance. Now let's move to something people feel more directly: dryness. The surface of the eye is covered by a thin layer of fluid called the tear film. This layer does more than provide comfort. It keeps the surface smooth so light can enter properly. It also protects against irritation and infection. If the tear film becomes unstable, vision can fluctuate. You may notice blurriness that comes and goes, a gritty sensation, eyes that feel tired more quickly. Many people assume this is a minor issue. But the tear film is part of the optical system. If it is not stable, the quality of the image entering the eye is reduced before it even reaches the retina. And this becomes more common with age. Blinking patterns change. Tear production can decrease. Screen use reduces how often we blink without realizing it. So again, what feels like a small surface issue is part of a larger system. Now let's connect this to something even broader: circulation. The eyes are part of the vascular system. That means they depend on the same blood flow that supports the brain, the heart, and other organs. If blood pressure is too high, it can damage small vessels over time. If blood pressure is too low, it can reduce adequate flow. If blood sugar levels are elevated, they can affect the integrity of those vessels and the tissues they supply. This is why conditions like hypertension and diabetes are closely linked to vision changes. Not because they directly affect vision in an obvious way at first, but because they gradually influence the systems that support vision. And here is something many people do not expect. Changes in the eyes can sometimes reflect changes happening elsewhere in the body. In clinical practice, the small vessels in the retina are often used as a reference point for vascular health. They are one of the few places where we can directly observe microcirculation. So, when we talk about improving eyesight naturally, we are also talking about supporting the health of these vessels. There was a patient I remember, in his early 70s, who came in because his vision felt slightly off. Not blurry enough to alarm him, but not as sharp as before. He had recently updated his glasses, and they helped, but the feeling remained. When we looked more closely, the issue was not primarily the lens or the focus. It was subtle changes in circulation and early signs of strain in the retinal vessels. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would have been obvious without looking deeper. What this shows is something important. The feeling of vision quality is not always just about focus. It is about how well the entire system is functioning. And that system includes the retina, the blood supply, the balance of oxidative stress, the surface tear film, and the signals being processed by the brain. When one part is under strain, the whole experience of vision can change. Sometimes gradually, sometimes in ways that are easy to dismiss. Now, there is one more piece that often goes unnoticed: light exposure. The eyes are designed to respond to natural light cycles. Bright light during the day helps regulate internal rhythms. Excessive artificial light, especially in the evening, can place additional stress on the system. Blue light from screens, in particular, increases the workload on the retina, not because it is immediately damaging in a dramatic sense, but because it contributes to cumulative stress over time. And again, this matters more as the system becomes less resilient with age. So when you put all of this together, a pattern starts to form. Vision is not controlled by a single factor. It is the result of multiple systems working together: circulation, cellular health, surface stability, light processing, metabolic balance. And each of these can be influenced positively or negatively by daily habits. That is why the idea of natural improvement cannot be reduced to one food, one supplement, or one habit. It is about supporting the system as a whole. Once you understand that, the next step becomes much clearer. Because now we can look at what actually helps support these systems in a practical, realistic way. And this is where the specific daily habits begin to matter more than most people expect. Now that you understand how the system works, the next step is practical. Not in the sense of quick fixes, but in the sense of supporting the systems that keep your vision stable over time. When people hear "improve eyesight naturally," they often expect one solution. But the eye does not work that way. It responds to multiple inputs: nutrition, circulation, light exposure, hydration, and metabolic balance. When those are supported together, the system performs better. When they're neglected, small declines begin to accumulate. So instead of one answer, there are several key areas that matter. I'm going to walk you through them clearly, one by one. 1. Nutrient support for the retina. The retina depends on specific nutrients to function properly. Two of the most important are lutein and zeaxanthin. These are carotenoids, natural compounds found in leafy greens like spinach and kale. They accumulate in the retina and help filter harmful light while reducing oxidative stress. Vitamin A is also essential. It supports the cells responsible for detecting light, especially in low light conditions. And omega-3 fatty acids help maintain the structure of retinal cells and support the surface of the eye. There is strong evidence supporting this. The age-related eye disease study, conducted by the National Eye Institute, showed that specific nutrient combinations can slow progression of age-related macular degeneration in people at risk. This does not mean nutrients reverse advanced disease, but they do support the system. In practical terms, include leafy greens regularly. Add sources of omega-3, such as fatty fish or flaxseed. Ensure adequate intake of vitamin A from foods like carrots, sweet potatoes, or eggs. This is not about supplementation alone, it is about consistent dietary support. 2. Blood flow and circulation. The retina depends on steady blood flow. Even small reductions can affect how well it functions over time. Movement plays a direct role here. Regular walking improves circulation, including to the small vessels that supply the eyes. It also helps regulate blood pressure, which is one of the main factors affecting these vessels. According to the American Heart Association, consistent, moderate physical activity supports vascular health and reduces strain on small blood vessels throughout the body. This includes the eyes. For older adults, this becomes more important. Because the vessels are less flexible than they used to be, they do not adapt as easily, so maintaining flow becomes more dependent on daily habits. In simple terms, movement helps keep the supply system working. Even light activity done consistently is more effective than occasional intense effort. 3. Light exposure and screen habits. Your eyes are constantly adapting to light. Natural daylight helps regulate internal rhythms and supports normal visual processing, but prolonged exposure to artificial light, especially from screens, changes how the eyes behave. One of the biggest issues is reduced blinking. When you focus on a screen, your blink rate drops. That means the tear film is not refreshed as often. The surface of the eye becomes less stable. At the same time, the retina is exposed to continuous visual input without rest. Over hours, this creates fatigue. You may notice difficulty focusing, heaviness around the eyes, temporary blurring. A practical adjustment is simple. Every 20 minutes, look away for at least 20 seconds at something farther away. This gives the focusing system a break. It also encourages blinking, which helps stabilize the tear film. Reducing screen brightness in the evening and limiting late-night exposure can also reduce cumulative stress. 4. Tear film support and hydration. The surface of the eye needs a stable tear layer. Without it, vision quality drops even if the internal structures are functioning well. Hydration plays a role here. When the body is dehydrated, tear production can decrease. The composition of the tear film can change, making it less stable. Omega-3 fatty acids also support tear quality, not just retinal health. And blinking matters more than most people realize. If you are reading or using screens for long periods, you may be blinking less than half as often as normal. A simple habit: pause periodically and blink slowly several times. This helps restore the surface layer. Eye drops can help with comfort, but they do not replace these underlying mechanisms. 5. Sleep and nighttime repair. Vision is not maintained only during the day. At night, the body performs repair processes. Cells recover from oxidative stress, the tear film stabilizes, the visual system resets after continuous use. Poor sleep interferes with this. You may notice the effect the next day. Dryness, sensitivity to light, difficulty focusing. Over time, repeated disruption can reduce the efficiency of recovery. There is also evidence linking sleep quality to eye health. Large population data, including findings from the UK Biobank, have shown associations between poor sleep patterns and increased risk of certain eye conditions, including glaucoma. The relationship is complex, but the pattern is consistent. Sleep is not separate from eye health. It is part of the maintenance system. 6. Blood sugar stability and retinal protection. This is one of the most overlooked factors. Blood sugar levels affect the small vessels in the retina. When levels are consistently elevated, even moderately, they can damage these vessels over time. This affects how well nutrients and oxygen reach the retinal cells. The early stages are often silent, but the long-term impact can be significant. This is why diabetes is one of the leading causes of vision problems worldwide. According to the American Diabetes Association, maintaining stable blood sugar is essential for preventing damage to the small vessels in the eyes. Even for people without diabetes, large swings in blood sugar can place stress on the system. In practical terms, balanced meals, avoiding large spikes from refined sugars, regular meal timing. These help stabilize the internal environment that supports the eyes. When you look at these 6 areas together, a pattern becomes clear. There is no single action that fixes vision, but there is a system you can support. Nutrition supports the cells. Movement supports the blood flow. Light habits reduce strain. Hydration stabilizes the surface. Sleep allows recovery. Blood sugar protects the vessels. Each one contributes to how well your eyes function over time. And when these are aligned, many people notice more stable vision, less fatigue, better comfort, slower progression of decline. Not because something dramatic changed overnight, but because the system is being supported instead of strained. And once you understand that, the next question becomes even more practical. How do you actually put this into a simple routine that you can follow without overthinking it? And this is where everything needs to come together in a way that is realistic and easy to maintain. When information is scattered, it becomes difficult to apply. You hear about nutrients, hydration, sleep, circulation, but without structure, most people fall back into old habits. So let's bring this together into something practical. Not a perfect routine, not an ideal plan that only works on good days, but a simple structure you can follow consistently. Because consistency is what supports the system over time. Start with the morning. When you wake up, your eyes have just gone through a period of recovery. The tear film has stabilized, the retina has had time to reset from constant visual input. This is when hydration matters. Drinking water early in the day helps restore fluid balance. It supports tear production and helps circulation begin the day more efficiently. Then comes light. Natural light exposure in the morning helps regulate internal rhythms. It signals to the body that it is time to be alert. It also supports how your visual system adapts throughout the day. Even a short walk outside can make a difference. Not for the eyes alone, but for circulation, blood pressure, and overall vascular function. Now think about how most days actually unfold. Long periods of sitting, extended screen time, reduced blinking. This is where the system starts to drift away from balance. So during the day, you need small resets, not complicated ones. Every 20 minutes or so, shift your focus away from the screen. Look at something farther away. Allow your eyes to relax their focus. At the same time, blink slowly, several times. This restores the tear film and reduces surface strain. These are small actions, but repeated throughout the day, they change the environment your eyes are working in. Now let's talk about food. Instead of thinking in terms of eye foods, think in terms of patterns. Meals that include leafy greens, healthy fats, stable sources of energy. These support the retina, the vessels, and the balance of oxidative stress. What tends to create problems are large swings. Meals that cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, followed by drops. These fluctuations affect the small vessels, including those in the eyes. Over time, that instability adds stress to the system. So the goal is not perfection. It is stability. Steady energy, balanced meals, consistent patterns. Now let's move to the afternoon and evening. This is where many people experience visual fatigue. The eyes have been working continuously for hours. The tear film becomes less stable, focus becomes less precise. At this point, people often push through. They keep reading, keep using screens, ignore the early signs of fatigue. But this is when a short break matters most. Even a few minutes of rest, closing your eyes, stepping away from screens gives the system a chance to reset. Then comes light exposure in the evening. This is another area where small adjustments have a large impact over time. Bright screens late at night keep the visual system active. They delay the body's transition into recovery mode. Reducing brightness, increasing distance from screens, or limiting use closer to bedtime helps the system shift more naturally into rest. Now we come to sleep. Sleep is not just rest, it is maintenance. This is when the body clears byproducts from cellular activity. It is when tissues recover from daily stress. If sleep is shortened or fragmented, that recovery becomes incomplete, and the effects accumulate. This is why consistent sleep patterns matter not just for energy, but for how well your eyes function the next day. Now, I want to address something directly. What does not work? Because this is where many people lose time and develop false confidence. There is no drink that repairs the eyes overnight. There is no single supplement that restores vision in isolation. There is no shortcut that replaces the underlying systems we've talked about. Some products can support comfort, some nutrients can support function, but none of them replace circulation, metabolic stability, or recovery. And this is where false reassurance becomes a problem again. Using eye drops and feeling temporary relief can make it seem like the issue is handled. Taking a supplement and expecting improvement without changing daily habits can create a similar effect. But the system underneath continues to behave the same way. So, the real question is not, what is the one thing that fixes my eyesight? It is, what patterns am I reinforcing every day? Because those patterns are what shape the long-term outcome. If you want to simplify everything we've discussed, you can think of it this way. Support the flow, protect the cells, stabilize the surface, allow recovery. That translates into movement, nutrition, hydration, light management, sleep. And when those are consistent, the system becomes more stable. Not perfect, but more resilient. Here is what you can do starting today. Drink water early in the morning. Get some natural light within the first part of your day. Move your body, even lightly, on a regular basis. Take short visual breaks instead of pushing through fatigue. Blink consciously during long screen use. Eat in a way that avoids large blood sugar swings. Wind down your light exposure in the evening. Protect your sleep as part of your eye health, not separate from it. These are not dramatic changes, but they are effective because they align with how the body actually works. If one part of this explanation stood out to you, something you recognized in your own routine, let me know. That kind of awareness is often the first step toward making changes that actually last. And if you want more clear, practical explanations like this, you can subscribe. I focus on helping you understand what is happening inside your body so you can act before small issues become bigger ones. There is a quiet truth in all of this. Vision rarely changes all at once. It changes slowly, through patterns that repeat day after day. And those same patterns are where your control still exists. Not in a single solution, but in how you support the system over time.